we learned the Maimis, right? We learned the 3 achdus. The Tzemach Tzedek finishes with an observation. 4 lines on top of the page. I'm starting to read inside 124. V'hine. Yesh evdei ke'chovim u'mazolos. Here. Okay, fine. There are pagans. Now, Rabbi say we already know that an Eved Aveda Zara doesn't say there is no Hashem. Eved Aveda Zara is guilty of Elakad Elakaya. Hashem is the God of gods. But his notion of Elakad Elakaya is Ozav Avayes Haaretz. Right? Shituf says Elakad Elakaya, but the Eibishter is a partial balabos, which is what the Eibishter expects of Goyim Kvayachol. And Aveda Zara is that you believe other Avayes Haaretz. So the Rebbe says there's even worse than that. Yes, there are pagans that deny God altogether. In other words, atheists. Now he calls them but if they believe in nothing, can be called a pagan. So arguably they believe in the constellations and the stars and the superstitions, but they don't believe that there's a super God, the Lakod Lakaya. It says in the pasuk, No. The pagans believed in a super God. They believed in the more intelligent Evdi Aveda Zara. All had a notion. It's called Celtic, right? Celtic, that predates Christianity. I don't know this. You would probably know about this stuff in Europe.
In Europe, I mean, there was a Celtic. Yeah, there is.
There was a Celtic culture. They were pagans. I had a former student who was a Giedis, who had been a devout Christian before she became Jewish, and she knew all about these things. And when this came up in class, she came to me and said, "Rabbi, it's true. That's what they believed." They had listen. The Indians, the American Indians, had what they called the Great Spirit. It's unbelievable how consistent the language that they use. They were mamish idolaters, but they have a Great Spirit. They have echad above the ribui. What makes it Aveda Zara is ozav avayes haaretz. But when you have a ribu and you don't have an echad, that's an atheist. That's an atheist. Kamesha Kasa brings the pasuk. And by the way, this pasuk is quoted in Tanya chapter 24, Perek Chav Dalet, which is the chapter in Tanya which describes Aveda Zara. Right? Perek Chav Beis describes what I call the pathology of Kalipa, which is how Kalipa develops. Ribe Tzimtzumim and Achrayim and Makif v'chuli. Perek Chav Dalet describes the Evdi Aveda Zara. So in that Perek he quotes this pasuk: "Kachshu b'Hashem," denying HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'yeminu. When they say Lo Yehu Rachman Ratan, it is nisht. There's no God. Shemakchishim gam kein b'mitzvah Chaf Hei hanau. The chiddush is they're denying the mitzvah, not mitzvah, or whatever this mitzvah is. What's this mitzvah? Tov Yud Zayin. They're denying mitzvah Chaf Hei. In other words, not only are they denying that there's no achdus, they're denying there's no God. Now, what's the chiddush of David? I can't tell you this for sure, but my surmise is, my understanding is, the chiddush of David is, when the Eibishter created the world, he created the world Zel Yom Hazeh Asalakim. And because the Eibishter created the world Zel Yom Hazeh, the Eibishter created the possibility for Kalipa. But the Kalipas that the Eibishter created, Kvayachal, are limited to Kalipas that know Hashem. In the Elam HaSayenim, it's Nega, and down here, in this world, it's Kalipas Tmeis Lagamri. But the idea of saying there's no God, we should not create that. So the Tzemach Tzedek's question is, how could it exist? How could there be an ideology, a shita, that says that there is no God, as opposed to saying that there's a God who's out of control, if the Eibishter Kvayachol did not make it? That's his question. But notice, I wanted you to see again, 5 lines from the top page 124. Now. They're not talking about achdus. Forget about achdus. There's no hamonas elikus. Hamona means to believe in the Eibishter or to focus in a way of understanding of the Eibishter. Deny that as well. And the Rebbe says, Asher hei mechuyavim bo gamkein. Gamkein bo. That Evdi Aveda Zara mechuyav in this as well. So the Rebbe says, this Madreg of Sancherev, he was a big Rasha, right? And if I may insert, the opposite of Sancherev in this context would probably be Nebuchadnezzar. He was a big Rasha. But Nebuchadnezzar was at least superstitious. Nebuchadnezzar was afraid. He wanted to kill, but he was also afraid. He was very paranoid about what Eibusha is going to do to him. You read the Sefer Daniel, you see the Nebuchadnezzar's paranoia. Sancherib was like Titus, you know. What's the difference between Titus? Titus destroyed the second base and Mikdash, and Nebuchadnezzar the first base. The difference is Titus laughed at God. Titus was an atheist. Titus was a Napoleon. You guys have to understand what's made Napoleon. What's made Napoleon? You read French history. The reformers, liberals, quote Napoleon. Napoleon was a man who was responsible for the death of millions of people 2 centuries ago. Millions of people 2 centuries ago is the equivalent of tens of millions of people today, or even more. Or for das fängt brimmt sich mit dem, because he was a Democrat, he was a liberal. He made himself an emperor. They forgot that little detail. He was a richtige Apokadis. You know what made him richtige Apokadis? He was brilliant. He probably had an IQ of 180. He was a genius of geniuses. He was a Gaon. So a moidendike cup. In other words, don't think of Napoleon as a little idiot. He was an incredible mind. And he dedicated his mind to research. Napoleon was a great general because he paid attention to detail. He wasn't lucky. He was very, very thought through. He dedicated his whole life to tactics of war. That's what he did. He spent all of his moyach to develop tactics of war and strategies, and he did very, very well. I mean, his biggest chap was he learned how to use cannons correctly. You need to understand, you're shooting a cannon 200 years ago, you're shooting a cannon a mile, 5,000 feet. How precise is going to be the place you're aiming for and the place that the bomb will actually land, that the ball will actually land? The accuracy was terrible. Terrible. He was very, very smart, and he understood all kinds of things, including the curve of the land and this, and he developed incredibly accurate methods of shooting cannons. If you are shooting a cannon at your enemy, and your enemy is shooting a cannon at you, and your enemy is off by 20 or 30 feet, and you're hitting them on target, it's not even a war. He was a brilliant man. He was a very, very smart. He was a Chanuka, but he was a emes apokadis. He lived in a Catholic world. He lived in a world full of frum goyim. But he himself was, the ultimate, I always give the same example. Napoleon made himself into an emperor. So an emperor has to put on a crown. So he did it in a cathedral. But what's it called? Notre Dame in Paris. But who put the crown on his head? Himself. This is yeshes she'en kamayu. Everything you learn about about Kalipa, everything you learn the psukim in Tanakh about Kalipa, he literally personified. In other words, you want a mashal for all the things in Chassidus is about Kalipa and about yeshes. You have a living example. His whole mitzvah, he was a real apokadis. Had to be careful because of politics. Why? Because the world was frum. The goyim were all frum. He was just waiting for people to catch up to him. I'm a smart guy, I'm an apokadis. I have to have a little patience to apokursify the whole world. Not that they're as smart as him and they'll understand his shita, but as long as they go along as they're zufrieden. So he put up with the galachim intermittently. He had no interest in God at all. At all. And in ancient times, it's like I said, I think Titus is in that class of a richtig apokadis. It's a oizgelach from the Mebish.
You think he didn't believe in anything?
Nothing. Except himself. Garnished. And he was a smart guy. You know, the words from the Friedrich Rebbe, where the Friedrich Rebbe had a shita, I've told this to you in an earlier shir, the Friedrich Rebbe had a shita, that any time he wrote to a Jew, he wrote Vosik v'chased isher Elekim, no matter who he was. The Friedrich Rebbe was corresponding with a Yid who was considered an apokadis. He considered himself an apokadis. So he says to the Rebbe, I'm insulted. He says, you call me a Vosik, a chased, a Yirei Elekim, an apokadis. So the Friedrich Rebbe tells him, nit von klappen Semichkes, und spielen in Korten wird man an apokadis. By playing with sunflower seeds, by popping sunflower seeds and playing cards, you don't become an apokadis. Von dem, I heard this from my Fuchs, von dem wird man a bur. That makes you into a garnished. An apokadis is shana upirish. An apokadis is shana. Shana meant geleret. Was meant geleret? Nicht ein Blatt Gemara, kolatere kula. Upirish, and you rebelled against it. In other words, you know apokadis, you're nothing. Napoleon even apokadis.
He knew Torah?
He knew, I don't know what he knew, but he understood what he was rebelling against. Now, of course, he'll say, because he's smart enough not to need God, as they always use the expression, right? And we'll say, just push it, gaiva v'yeshes. It's a sehr viel gehalten von sich. He so much believed in himself, and he destroyed France. He really destroyed Europe. So many people died because of Napoleon. It's unimaginable. He was mamish like Hitler. Why is he spoken of more favorably than Hitler? He was responsible for so many deaths. I'm sorry? No, but my point is...
I'm not saying you're
My
incorrect.
point is, they talk about him. So the French took him, after he died, they exhumed him, they brought his remains to Paris, they put it in some place. He was a loser, that's what he did.
He did French won wars.
But he lost. He lost. It wasn't the others.
But he did something. Our friends
And what he did to Europe, it's unreal. It's really, really unbelievable that a guy should have done so much damage. You know, he has famous quotes. One of them is, I continue to try and help mankind, and people keep getting in the way. So what do you do when people get in the way? You kill them. Simple. I'm trying to help you. You know, if it takes a little time, you know. He was a richtig applicator. And Sancherev was the same thing. He sent to blaspheme. So when Mashiach comes, it's written, "Vayemu Yegalach Adnai v'Geimer b'Melech Esareish v'Shar Haraglayim v'Gam Tzazok Tisafet." The Mashiach comes, and by the way, the Rebbe quotes this pasuk again, 7 lines from the end. The line that begins with the word "V'Lachein La'Osad Lo Yegalach Havai b'Melech Hashem." Hashem is going to cut off his hair. The shaila of the Maimed Abei Sayi is, how can atheism stand? It's God's world. Who created Kalipa? He did. Why? Zelu part and parcel of the Zelu Mazeh is part and parcel of the Zelu Mazeh is it is Kalipa. But to deny the Eibush categorically, that's not Kalipa. That's Kenezayin. Even when somebody denies the Eibush, they can't deny the Eibush that there isn't an Eibush. They can deny the Eibush that he's not so involved. But atheism, which is what Sancherev believes, what Titus believed, and again, a latter day example would be Napoleon believed. This is emis apokursis, richtig apokursis, kfidah, anatheism. And the Maimed says if the Eibusha didn't create such a possibility, how does such ability exist? And he explains interessante Zach.
He did all kinds of witchcraft and whatever it is.
Maybe, but he didn't believe in God. All of these guys have a dark side. In other words, he may have been superstitious and paranoid, but God, there's no God. Someone who could tell me, as opposed to somebody that I can speak to, no, that's not true. He wasn't a pasha to pagan. He grew up in a Christian world. He grew up with God, and he just killed him. So the Rebbe says, "V'ha'inyan." So again, we're answering a question. That a goy should deny achdus Hashem, I get, but that a goy should deny Hashem on the level of a lakaya. And again, what I'm emphasizing is even worse than a vedazara, which is also for a goy, but at least as an lakaya. How could such a thing be? And the teretz is v'ha'inyan. The teretz is key. I'm 8 lines into the page. Sibas mitzias anoshim royim b'chatoyim b'nafshesim kolkach. The cause. Look at every single one of these words. Yeah, anoshim royim v'chatoyim. Men that are evil and sinful, right? These words are by Sdoim, right? For Anshe Sdoim, Royim v'chatoyim la'Hashem b'yed, right? Where do you have the words chatoyim b'nafsheisam? That's Keirach. The Reish Nun Ish, chotu b'nafsheisam. So the Tzemach Tzedek fuses 2 contexts. Anoshim Royim v'chatoyim like Steim. Chotu b'nafsheisam like Anshe Keirach. What's the Anshe Keirach? You understand? They knew what they were rebelling against. Kol kach, the teretz is ze'olefisha klipa mizdamas l'kedusha, because the zelu yumazeh is complete, and whatever you have in kedusha, you're going to have in klipa. And there's something in kedusha which accounts for something so remote that when you klipify that, when you parallel that to klipa, you end up with atheism. And what is that? V'hinei, kamesha begdusha lekis yadua, in supernal holiness. There is a notion in godliness, in bittul, there's a phenomena called hair, shaitis, and he brings a pasuk, and then he goes into a whole arichas of what this means. Now I want you to scoot down all the way to the line that says velomar. which is about 11 or 12 lines from the end of the paragraph. Says the Rebbe, V'hinei, the line that begins with the word Velomar, closer to the end of the line, V'hinei, ha-Kalipa mizdam mizgamken. The Kalipa has a parallel of the inyan ha-shayris, lashpiyah mena gamken b'chin ha-shayris, to produce from it what's also the equivalent of shayris. And when you have shayris, v'oz ha-ashpa nimsheches b'dila kerech, if you're starting off with Kalipa, what's Kalipa? Elokad Elokaya. But the Kalipa is Elokad Elokaya. More specifically, Kalipas are the Elokad Elokaya, the level of shituf. Right? There's a God of gods. Correct? There's a God of gods. What does that mean? Hashem is distant from us. Not He's not involved at all. But He created the tools, and the tools run the world on His behalf with His bechira. Since there is Haara da Haara, since there is shayris from Kalipa, which is a Elokad Elokaya, you're not only going to end up on Avodah Zarah, because Avodah Zarah is close to shituf. You can end up with atheism. Just like in Kiddush, there's a concept called shayris, which is a big deal, a big leap, which I'm going to explain momentarily. So the same is true in Kalipa. Kalipa's beginning is shituf, right? Kalipa's highest madrega is noiga. What's noiga? What's shituf? There is a neibishter. He is involved, but he's not involved in everything. He's not involved directly. He has helpers. Shayris of shituf is not Avodah Zarah. No. Avodah Zarah is too close to it, because Avodah Zarah also says Elokad Elokaya. Shayris of Kalipa is going to be atheism. That's the word. B'dilu ge'erech, a quantum jump, a leap in a measurable way, in a complete number way. As a distance of the word canal, and this radiates, it allows for goyim ha-kefrim b'havaya legamri, that are atheists. They denied God altogether. Says the Rebbe, Ve'ilu, and if there were no shayris.
What about Yidden? It's his going over here.
Right, so a Yid who's an atheist, so I guess the teretz is he takes atheism from a goy, from a sanchedem. In other words, listen, Yidden, it's not a secret that mechrivayech, maharsayech, or machrivayech, mimeich yitzeyu. Yidden have suffered more from fellow Jews than from anybody else, Rachmana litzlan. Right? But the possibility for such an evil klipa to exist is because the Eibishter created the base for it. So you're right. You would have to say a Yid takes it from the goy, and when the Yid is from like a goy, he's frummer than the goy. You have in Pashas Ha'azinu leishorim aviseichem. As she says, a goy walks by an Avodah Zarah and says, "Zeh Avodah Zarah Yehudi." Only a Jew is nuts enough to create such an Avodah Zarah. In other words, when the Yid gets lost, he outgoys the goy, but it's goyishkeit. And he says, Ve'ilu haya hashpa nimshechas lehem b'adraga. If the Eibishter would create Kalipa, which is Elokad Elokaya shituf, and there would not be shayris, which I haven't yet explained, by the way, from Elokad Elokaya, from shituf, there would only be hadraga, gradualism, as opposed to quantum jumping, in a chain reaction of steps following the laws of causality. That means closeness. They would be, maybe they'd be Avodah Zarah, but they would have to say that there's a super God. Maybe uninvolved, maybe not involved at all, but there's a God. The Kodol, they call him the God of gods, if not on the level of shituf, which is good for a goy, at least on the level of Avodah Zarah, which is not good, but it's in the realm. Because at least they know that there's a creator, even they hold he has no involvement. Whereas, but however, since Hashem gives Kalipa everything Kedusha has, so it's able to throw its Peidesem means its radiation, its secondary components, the hair that comes from it, in a way that's quantum separated. It creates the possibility for total deniers, that means atheists. And then the Rebbe finishes, when Mashiach comes, Hashem is in quotes going to cut their hair off. So there's a kasha mtateret. The kasha is, I understand why Kalipa exists, I understand why Goyim exist. The way a Goy should be, is he should believe, what's the Lashon Harav? He should believe in Mitzvah Chavhei, and he's not mechuyev to believe in Mitzvah Yitzayin. And if he believes in Mitzvah Chavhei, and he says, that the Eivish is a Elokad Elokaya, on a level of Shituf, is an Edel Chagoy. But because this Kedusha, this in everything there's a Shtalshalos, there could also be a Goy with Eved Avodah Zarah. But a guy who was an apokaitis, the Rebbe said, how could apokaitis make this? How could you have atheists? And the answer is because the zel yomazeh goes to shaitis as well. Okay? Now, unless there's some Kabbalistic reason, you have to look at me through a particular eye.
Yes, there is.
Rabbi said the nekuda is that, and by the way, this is going to be in the next Maimed in the beginning. There's a phenomenon called ha'ara deha'ara. Have you ever seen ha'ara deha'ara? You have it in Tanya in a lot of places. You have a ha'ara. Ha'ara. You also have sometimes ha'ara deha'ara, which is
beginning of the Maimed.
Okay. Right, very good. But there's a concept of ha'ara and the concept of ha'ara deha'ara. And I'm going to be very direct with you. I remember being a young bocher, probably 16 or 17. A young bocher, I think a young bocher. And I wanted to understand Chassidus. And I really didn't have who to talk to. I guess later on I did. But it was in California. I didn't really have a mashpia that I was able to talk to. So I used to imagine things. I used to fantasize things. So I remember imagining a ha'ara deha'ara. But I imagine it in a very simplistic way.
Global illumination. When,
if you have a light that bounces off a mirror, that's a ha'ara. If it bounces off a second mirror, that's a ha'ara deha'ara. Now I had to convince myself that there was a logical distinction between when it bounces off the first mirror and bounces off the second mirror. And mirrors. There isn't.
It's not mirrors. It loses something with each aura, no? So it's like slightly...
It loses something if it's not a mirror. But if it is a mirror, it loses nothing. And I remember being a 16-year-old bocher, I remember where I was pacing, trying to tell myself that and it was stupid, nonsensical. If light bounces off 10 mirrors, it's light.
It's a laser.
No, that's the
convergence of light on a common point. But let's not do this, please. We're the same wavelengths. Okay, let's leave it alone. The pshat ha'ara deha'ara means something that comes from a source that doesn't look like the source. That's the taich. Ha'ara deha'ara has two other names, and if you like to know Chassidus, write these names down. Ha'ara deha'ara is called ha'ara nivdeles, nun beis dal lamed tov. And ha'ara deha'ara is also called oir shel tulda. Oir is aleph vav reish, tulda is tov of lamed al hey. What does ha'ara deha'ara or oir shel tulda or ha'ara of nedalis mean? Light that comes from a source that doesn't look like it.
So like
the simplest example is a rainbow. The simplest example is a rainbow. Push it. It comes from the sun, doesn't look like it. Because the light that comes from the sun is white. And if you remember our conversation about that there's two components, there's a bli gavul, it's at least in the nimshal. And when you divide the light up into individual colors, that light came from the sun, doesn't look like a source. That's how you were saying.
I think like a solar panel, that light goes onto it and electricity comes out, that like a ha'ara.
That may be actually a ha'ara, the ha'ara. Because you're actually changing it into something physical. Or maybe the effect of the electricity, what the electricity is used. Maybe the electricity would be called the ha'ara, and the machine that's actually running. Ha'ara, I really don't understand clearly. The only way to explain the third word, ha'ara, is to say that it's not light at all. Not it's a changed light, it's not light. It's become a photon, it's become, photosynthetically been made into matter, as opposed to energy. It's a complete change.
Two filters.
Two
screens.
No. That doesn't do it. 50 screens is only going to be ha'ara deha'ara. Light reflects its source. Light reflects its source. When light comes from the source, doesn't affect its source, it's ha'ara deha'ara. Doesn't matter how many screens. It doesn't become a third ha'ara because you put it through another screen. It becomes a third ha'ara when it stops being light completely. Energy stops being light. It stops reflecting the source. So now, one of the mesholim for ha'ara deha'ara, which is used in Kabbalah, is hair. Why? Because api Kabbalah. Okay, this is not biology. Because api Kabbalah, api Teda, hair comes from the brain, and it bursts through the skull. It pushed the life of a hair comes from the brain, and it bursts through the skull. The question you should ask is, why is the hair on the head not considered holy, and the hair on the face is? It should be fakert. If the beard is holy, the hair on the head should be even holier. But okay, there's explanations. In other words, we don't say that hair, biologically, hair grows because of the skin. It's very simple. It has nothing to do with going on to the body. The skin has a capacity to produce hair, and there's reasons why the body produces hair. It's to do with warmth. This is not our department. Okay, but apiteda, hair doesn't come from the skin, it comes from the life that's under the skin. But it comes through the skin. So hair comes from the brain, correct? And the argument that Chassidus gives, your brain produces ideas and your brain produces hair. What's the difference between how your brain produces ideas and your brain produces hair? When your brain produces ideas, the ideas reflect what the brain is. When your brain produces hair, there's no corollary, there's no similarity whatsoever between what it is inside the brain and what bursts through the skull. It's nothing. It's so little chayas, as the Maimon describes. You can cut the hair, it doesn't even hurt. If you yank on the hair, it hurts because it's where it's connected to the skull. But if you cut the hair, it doesn't hurt because there's so little chayas. Now, Rabbi said, I want to give you a mashal of higoyim. You'll understand it. You know what would be an example for this in Pashta Verter? A ha'ara would be you learning and understanding a sugi in Gemara. And the ha'ara would be you learning the halach and shulchan aruch which came from that Gemara.
Where's the third?
I guess the kiyum mitzvah itself. The shulchan aruch tells you the din. This din came from machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and then there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yasi and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Shimon. What Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel meant, and then Rav and Rabbi argued about it, and then Ravina and Rashi argued about it, and then Rabbi Tam and Teisvis and Rashi and the Rambam argued about it again. Yeah, and then the Beis Yosef with Mechabe the Ramah argued about it again. And then you have a trukan halacha, do it this way. That halacha came from all of that pilpul, and the halacha is a boring, practical instruction. Now, there's a big pilpul that's made out of halacha. So we say halachas are the highest shadish. So from kisra shel teira, stop it, and it falls the lowest. Halacha is the highest shadish, and it falls the lowest. But a halacha is reflecting the chokhmah of a Tana and Amera like hair does. It's ha'ara dahara. It reflects very, very little. When you learn halacha, the chokhmah of the Rabbeim, of the Gedei Yisrael Amitiyim, that was invested and extracted, that halacha is lost. So the ariches, the pilpul, the Talmud, this is the ha'ara. The dry halacha is a dogma for ha'ara dahara. So you have three different examples for ha'ara dahara, and I can go on. One example is hair. Another example would be the colors of a rainbow. And the third example, which is the most ruchnistic example, is when a person learns a greisa chokhmah. And he comes to a simple maskana. And he goes to simpler people, not as smart as he, and says, this is what you need to do. That action is the ha'ara of the mayach, of the chokham, who expounded this idea. So the Kabbalistic terminology for it is either shaitis, sidus with ashin smalis, which means hair, or they use sometimes the word mazolis, a mazel. A mazel compared to the source of the mazel is considered a ha'ara dahara.
The source of the what?
A mazel compared to the source of the mazel, which comes higher than the mazel, it's considered a ha'ara dahara. The kav is considered a ha'ara dahara of Ein Seif. So it's a lashon Kabbalah high chuta yakira kadisha the kav chut the ikri mazel. It's a mazel. It's a ha'ara compared to Ein Seif Shlefnei Hatzilas. So the Rebbe says, can you stop that please? This Kiddush. Kiddush is achdus Hashem ein eid mulvadeh. Yeah? What would be a ha'ara, the ha'ara of Kiddush? In this context. The ha'ara of Kiddush would be shituf. A ha'ara of achdus Hashem would mean someone who lives by the principles of achdus Hashem and doesn't understand it. Because it's the same as it. The ha'ara of achdus Hashem would mean someone who says that there's an Eibishter, but he has a difficult time believing that he's totally involved. Alakad alakaya. But what if you start with alakad alakaya? What could be a ha'ara of alakad alakaya? If you start off with an idea there's an Eibishter, and he created the world, a minute, but he's not involved directly in everything. He has helpers, supporters, assistants. So a ha'ara of alakad alakaya would be alakad alakaya. Not shituf, avodah zarah. Shituf and Avodah Zarah both go under the label of Elokah D'Elokayah. What's the difference? Avodah Zarah says Ozav Hashem is Haaretz, and Shituf says the Eibush has a limited involvement. But what's a Ha'ara? The Ha'ara of Elokah D'Elokayah. And the answer is a kfidah, Kalipa. So the Eibush created Kalipa. And in as much as Eibush created Kalipa, he creates Elokah D'Elokayah. The Ha'ara of Elokah D'Elokayah is Avodah Zarah. The Ha'ara of Elokah D'Elokayah is kfidah, kexhu b'havaya v'leimar lehu. There is no God, Rahman al-Islam. The reason this exists is because of the principle of Zeli Umazeh. Just like a Kedusha, there is Ha'ara, which is doing achdus Hashem without understanding achdus Hashem. And the Ha'ara of achdus Hashem, which we're going to say is Shituf, is Elokah D'Elokayah in a limited way. So the Ha'ara of Elokah D'Elokayah is going to be anatheism. So the Rebbe says, we know that a goy is allowed to accept Elokah D'Elokayah, but he has to accept mitzvah chavhei, that there is a God a goy has to accept. Yeah, only a yid is mechoyev in mitzvah taf yud zayin, but a goy is mechoyev mitzvah chavhei. How could there be a goy who accepts, who doesn't accept mitzvah chavhei? The teretz is, just like from a yid comes a ha'ara da ha'ara, which is a goy who believes in Elokah D'Elokayah and doesn't believe in achdus. So zelo mazas alakim, from a goy who believes in achdus, believes in shituf, comes a goy that not able to complete. And he finishes by saying, "V'lachein la'asad lovim." Mashiach comes, there's still going to be goyim, but yigaleach Hashem b'melech ashas hashayres. Hashem's going to cut Sancherev's hair off. Cutting Sancherev's hair off means he's going to take away the capacity for a goy, because of his intelligence, to go from believing in Elokah D'Elokayah to believing that there's no God at all. I'm reading 7 lines from the bottom of the paragraph. Here is no longer going to sprout from Kalipa. That from the hair of Kalipa you have 6 lines from the end. Please look inside. Hanifrad hagomor, one is entirely separated. Hakefer legamri, a total atheist. Kimalach ashur hanal. And the Rebbe says that when Mashiach comes, listen to this, V'dayim la klipis. Klipa is going to have to be happy b'mitzias umes ha'elam, with an existence of goyim. Hamedim b'Hashem. They admit Hashem. How could Klipa be happy with goyim believing in the Eibishter? Elokah D'Elokayah. Shleilim Chosharas Kanal. And then the Rebbe says, Ve'elu yiskaimu. And in El Mabah, goyim who believe in the Eibishter, even if they believe in the Eibishter, they're going to continue to exist. Shita farvas, they were never given the mitzvahs achdus, canals we discussed before now. And then the Rebbe finishes 4 lines from the end. The Rebbe said, I don't know how many ways I can say to look inside. We were given a good which is doubled and redoubled, which is we were commanded in this mitzvah liyes lana, that we should have liyasad love pnimiyis gilu yelakusei yizbarach, that because now we're mitzvah ala achdus, not just ala shituf. In other words, mitzvah taf yud zayin, not just mitzvah chafei, and we taka believe in the Meibishtin. That's when Mashiach comes, we're going to experience it, like it says in the pasuk of Oma b'yemahu hi ne'elkeinu zeh twice there, like it says in Chassidus. Okay, yeshakech. Tomorrow morning, new maimed. I think tomorrow I won't give a shiur. Give you 1 day, but you should learn. And then Mitzvah Hashem, Thursday we'll have the first shiur in the new maimed. Yeshakech.